All right, welcome to Investigation 1A. In all of Investigation 1, we're going to be talking about weather. And I know what you're thinking, wait, isn't this whole class about weather? Absolutely. But what actually is weather, and how do we as meteorologists look at weather data? And do we just look at it at the surface, or do we actually look higher up in the atmosphere? If you're on a plane flying at 35,000 feet, you might want to know what the weather conditions are like because you want to know if it's safe to fly or not. So that's the stuff we're going to be covering in this investigation in both 1A and 1B. So let's jump in. So for investigation 1A, we're going to really be pinpointing on what is weather. So weather is the condition of the atmosphere at a given place and time. So when we're talking about weather, we're talking about what's happening in the atmosphere. And something I really want to stress about weather is that it is instantaneous. Now, Terrence, what does instantaneous mean? Well, I'm glad you asked. Instantaneous means it's happening at a specific time. Not 5 seconds beforehand, not 5 seconds afterwards. It's happening at a specific time. The other thing about weather is that it's unique to an individual location, meaning the weather conditions where you are at are not the same as the weather conditions 2 blocks away. Now, I know what you're thinking, but aren't they pretty similar? Yes, but they're not the same. They're not perfectly the same. That being said, I oftentimes refer to weather as the here and now of the atmosphere. Weather can vary greatly over a small area, and I'll show you proof of that in a moment. A good example of this is even looking here in the Bay Area where I'm recording this. You can go from one town to another town just a few miles away and experience a noticeable difference in temperature. Weather's constantly changing. If you've ever heard the old phrase, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes, well, believe it or not, that's true everywhere. The temperature outside right now is likely different than it was 5 minutes ago, and it will likely be different 5 minutes from now. Again, those differences are most likely small, but they're still differences. And where do we get our weather from? Well, our weather and the differences in weather are fueled by the sun, and more specifically, by the uneven heating on the Earth from the sun. And we'll go into that more and more into detail in this class, but I just wanted to throw that out there right now. So, as I mentioned, weather varies from place to place. This is a map I pulled up a few years ago called the Wonder Map. There's actually a few things that you can see on here. The first one are all of these little circles. And in the center of these circles is a number. That number is the current temperature. And if you take a look, there is variation in this temperature. Near downtown San Jose, there's a location with a temperature of 56, next to one of 57, next to one of 58. Meanwhile, over by the airport, around 55. You see even more variation if you spread out a little bit further. Many of the foothills over here were in the high 50s and some even in the low 60s. And not only does weather vary greatly from place to place, it also varies greatly from minute to minute. So here's what this is. So this previous graph was at a frozen time, and right here it says Tuesday, April 11th, 2017, 8:48, 30, so 8:48 in the morning, 30 seconds. So that's when this snapshot was taken. And then from minute to minute. So rather than focusing on a bunch of different locations, this is one location looking at how weather conditions changed over time. And there are actually 3 important weather conditions here. This blue line represents air temperature, this green line represents relative humidity, and this black line represents dew point temperature. And if you notice, none of these lines are perfectly straight. No, they wiggle, they vary, they go up and down. That's weather. That's the idea behind weather, is that these things are constantly changing. Now, one last thing I'll say in this little mini demo is that weather conditions don't just include temperature. And this is something I would love for you to write down. I would love for you to memorize it. I'd love for you to get it tattooed on your body if you have to. I'm just kidding about that one. But weather is more than just temperature. Yes, when you pull out your phone, that's the first number that you usually see. It's that big number, 56 degrees, 57 degrees. But that's only one element of weather conditions. There are actually other elements as well. And here's where some of them are. So air temperature, that's the big one. Air pressure, which we're actually going to cover in the next investigation. Cloud cover, how cloudy or sunny it is. Precipitation, stuff falling from the sky. Humidity, how humid or how dry it is. Wind direction and wind speed, how fast the wind is blowing, where the wind is coming from. Visibility, if you're a pilot, you want to know about visibility. And then all of these conditions are then collected using various methods. And we're actually going to cover a lot of those methods throughout this course. We'll talk about how they're measured. We'll talk about their significance. Today we're not going to focus on that. We're just going to focus on looking at the big picture. And then in the next few investigations, we'll actually start to pick apart each one of these individually. And we'll uncover some really cool stuff about them. That being said, modern day weather maps oftentimes plot all of these on one map or on a very, very small multitude of maps. And they do it using a very useful symbol called the station model. And actually, if we go back, there's actually something else on these little symbols right here, these little circles, that I didn't cover yet, and that was this pole sticking out of some of them. No, that doesn't mean they're Teletubbies. It means it actually represents wind direction. And we'll actually talk about that more in the next demo video for the next part of this investigation. But that's it. This should help you with the first several questions, and then once we get to more looking at weather maps and the station model, that'll be covered in the next video.